Hello and welcome to Beaverdale Books. Thanks for coming tonight, and before we get started I want to say a few words about some events we've got coming up. We are celebrating our 19-year anniversary on Saturday, July 12th, so be sure to stop by for free refreshments, free ARCs, special buy one get one offers on select hardcovers, a fun contest, free sentences, and a 19% discount on most items all day long. And then we have two big ticketed events. Chris Whitaker, author of All the Colors of the Dark, on Monday, July 14th, and sportscaster Christine Brennan with her new book about Caitlin Clark on Tuesday, July 15th. You can find all the details on our website or pick up a flyer at the register. Now, on to tonight's program. There's Trouble, and then there's Big Lake Troubles. Jeffrey Bolt's new book, Big Lake Troubles, picks up where his acclaimed first novel, Blue Lake, left off. It's been described as an elegant exploration of the ethics of tackling the climate crisis in a flawed system and an inspiring journey of personal growth, connection, and truths beyond courtroom walls. Kirkus, in a starred review, deemed it as one of the best legal thrillers of the year. In addition to being a novelist, Jeff is a former administrative law judge from Wisconsin. He spent 24 years working as an administrative law judge before retiring, and he is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin and its School of Law. He received his MFA in fiction from Augsburg University in 2019, and his short fiction, poetry, and essays have appeared in numerous literary journals. So please join me in welcoming Jeffrey D. Bolt.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. And thank you for having me, Beaverdale Books. Welcome all. As Jan said, Big Lake Troubles is a sequel to Blue Lake, but it also stands on its own, and you don't have to have read the first book to enjoy the second. In both of these books, I'm trying to have the propulsive plot and sort of vibe of a thriller married with a literary novel of place, that place being the upper Midwest and Wisconsin in particular. So the characters drive the stories. Like a literary novel, you get to know the characters and their concerns before any of the sort of action stuff takes hold of them. And I think that's how it often happens in real life. So because the characters drive the story, I'm going to give a brief reading that will give you a feel for each of the four main characters. It's written in close third person. You get inside the minds of each of these four characters, two men and two women. The first is, we'll start with Jason and Grace, the two of the lawyers. Jason, as the story opens, is a bit of a sad sack. He's a slightly traumatized former administrative judge in his early 50s who did environmental hearings before he took an early retirement. Grace Clarkson is his contemporary and former law school classmate. She's dating Jason, and more importantly for the story, she's the attorney representing some neighbors opposing a coal shipping plant in the fictional town of Lake Superior City up on Lake Superior. The first reading is the longest, and it gives you a feel for those two. The novel opens and closes with Jason looking back in November 2023 on events that happened in 2019 and 2020. So here's the opening, the prologue, a rough couple of years. Jason was back in La Crosse. It was the 40th anniversary of his father's death in 1983, and he went to his father's grave outside of town and then into this city to trek his dad's favorite hike. As he approached the steep little hill on Crown Boulevard that led to the path, Jason saw a sign. Damn. Was it now posted no trespassing? It was no doubt valuable property. But when Jason got close enough to read it, to his relief, the sign had been put up by Mississippi Valley Conservancy. It had been protected forever for public use. His dad would have been so pleased. The route went straight up along a sandstone bluff, a trail his late mom had called Peter the Goat Herder's Path. Still, she'd often join Jason and his brother as his father told them wild stories from his childhood about exploring the caves above them. Stories involving springs and some strangely sympathetic bats that had led his father and friends out of the caves when they'd been lost. Jason made his way up to the top where there was a wide view of the river. His father claimed that on a clear day, one could see Minnesota and Iowa, as well as the sloughs and turns of the great river snaking its way down the west coast of Wisconsin. It was a warm November day, 64 degrees and sunny. There was still a surprising amount of color, too. There were some stubborn red and gold oak leaves and even some spindly green shoots on the bushes lower to the ground as he made his way up the winding path. Up at the top, there was a bench painted in festive, Grateful Dead style colors. The cross had always had plenty of hippies, including his dad. Jason sat there on the bench, missing his father, as well as his mother, Tara, and Camille. He heard himself say his father's slightly corny prayer. "Thanks for the giving, Lord, but please go easy on the taking away." It made him laugh because it was especially fitting these days. Jason had had a rough couple of years. After the hike, Jason went down to the Charmant Hotel and paid homage to his lost love, Tara. The hotel was in a red brick former chocolate factory down by the Mississippi. Now Jason toasted Tara and let himself revel in his bittersweet memories. Though love had come to him again, the memory still burned like hot coals. Coal itself was at the heart of the next calamitous turn of events, as it was for the whole planet. Fighting coal had its own set of consequences. The powers that be wouldn't give it up easily. Jason still had nightmares about the coal island, Earl, the boat, and especially Camille and the dogs. Okay, now we move into the first chapter. So that sets it up a bit. You get a sense that something's going to go on with some dogs there, and like a classic prologue. First chapter, Organic Foodie Goodness, it's titled. The sunny September day was perfect for Jason Erickson's drive from Madison to Viroqua to meet his girlfriend, Grace Clarkson. The rolling hills along two-lane Highway 14 were still full of summery life. He noticed a large bird with the unflapping wing flight and white head of a mature eagle glide effortlessly from a bluff to the large cottonwood stand along the creek. It settled onto its nest to feed its young. Jason pulled over and snapped a picture, but it was too distant to keep. It didn't matter. He'd seen it. It was there, protecting its young. As he pulled into the western Wisconsin town of Viroqua, he saw a few climate protesters, gray-haired organic farmers and back-to-nature greens, out in front of the food co-op with homemade signs. Jason's late father would probably have known some of them, his dad's old hippie buddies who'd settled in the hills of the Driftless areas many years ago. But there were also 3 young couples with their kids, including some who'd probably skipped school. It was touching to see the school-agers. This was their day, the International Climate Day of 2019, organized by Greta Thunberg and young people worldwide who were protesting inaction on the climate crisis. A group of them had even presented a complaint to the United Nations, calling inaction child abuse. Jason honked his support for the local crowd and pulled over to take a picture when some kids waved. "Do you mind if I take the picture?" he asked. "No, that's what we're here for," one woman replied. She was a young mom with a baby on her back and another grade school-aged girl peeking out through a cutout hole in a large paper box painted to look like floodwaters. "How high is the water, Mama?" "I'm scared," was written on the box. "Feel free to post it," she added. "That's why we're here." "Great, I will." Her daughter smiled at him. Jason still cared that much, at least. He was finding that there was a certain science of not caring. The Dalai Lama said compassion was not a sign of weakness, but strength, But then Jason was still a little weak and jumpy from losing Tara and having been shot. His focus bounced from thought to feeling, and from feeling to a kind of restless murmur, as though some intrusive background music was playing, the low throbbing hum of loss. Okay, I'm skipping ahead just a bit here to give you a feel for Grace. Grace really wanted him to get involved in the fight against the renewal of an enormous coal shipment and storage facility on Lake Superior. She'd sent him a lengthy email. It was a 5-year permit renewal. Fighting coal was fighting the climate crisis itself, she argued. Not without reason. Burning fossil fuels for electricity was still the leading source of greenhouse gas emissions that led to climate change. Every ton of coal burned represented almost 3 tons of carbon dioxide alone, and most of the sulfur dioxide in the air. Though the numbers were down because of the rise of natural gas, 10 million tons of coal still went through this plant every year. They shipped Powder River Basin coal from Wyoming and Montana all the way to Europe and Asia via the St. Lawrence Seaway, as well as to local power plants. The fate of the world was at stake, but was he up to the challenge? Had Tara's death killed some part of him too? The part that gave 2 figs, that was willing to do more than post pictures on Instagram? So then I'm skipping ahead a little bit again. He meets Grace, and she tries to pressure him to get involved in this case. We're still in Jason's head, but this gives you a good feel. You do get inside Grace's head during the course of the novel, but the dialogue will show that she often more than holds her own with Jason. Grace napkined a little yogurt dressing off the side of her mouth. Yum, that's excellent. But the locals swear they're messing with the air monitors and don't spray down the coal piles with that stuff to keep the dust down. Apparently that stuff is very expensive, and the neighbors think they're only spraying it on a small portion of the pile. She reached into her backpack and pulled out some photos. Looking at these, I'd say they're onto something. Grace handed him the pictures. Someone had hung out white sheets to dry and taken photos at regular intervals over 2 days. Over the course of just 48 hours, they looked like black and white Jackson Pollock paintings with increasingly large black blotches. Jason thought of the young mother on the highway, the baby on her neck, and the little girl with the box sign. That's obscene. Kids are breathing this air when they play outside in Lake Superior City. You know the answer, Judge, Grace replied. This is all very compelling, but why does it have to be me? It doesn't necessarily, Grace said. There's a lawyer in Eau Claire who is interested and has some time. She handed him another picture. A girl of 3 or 4 with big brown eyes was holding some breathing apparatus over her mouth and nose. This is Lacey, one of the daughters of the petitioners. She's had asthma since she was 2. Grace paused, and as Jason looked at the heartbreaking photo. Her mom says she's been to the ER so much she calls it the ear. Grace looked at him closely and then looked away. Do I have to go to the ear again, Mommy? So that gives you a sense of the first 2 characters. I promise the next readings are much shorter. I did do an MFA program, so I know how boring it can be to listen to somebody on and on. These are a little snappier. Courtney is representing the coal shipper. She's an attorney in her late 30s in Chicago. On the surface, she's kind of cynical and sarcastic, but as we learn over the course of it, she's masking some considerable childhood trauma. So Courtney was a minor character that people had liked in Blue Lake, and I wanted to get directly into her head in this book. And this is the exact moment where I found what I thought was her voice. And this chapter is called Not All Gingerbread. Courtney Sharp had won some significant cases that had helped make her managing partner, but she'd long ago learned that being MP wasn't all big bonuses and freshly baked gingerbread. Today was an especially good illustration of how much it could suck. First, there was the employee management issue from Hal, especially for Courtney. A disgruntled female associate who had not been given partner track status had filed a complaint against a female partner, alleging that she'd been screwing a handsome young male associate. The young male attorney had recently made partner, while the complaining associate had not, which would potentially cost the young woman hundreds of thousands of bonus dollars over the course of her firm career. As an ambitious young associate, Courtney had done something similar herself with partners at Higgins and Clark. Those old partner paramours were gone, but surely some critical people in the firm knew the story of her own ascent at Higgins and Clark. It was a terrible conflict of interest for Courtney as managing partner. Would she have to disclose it? How much of it? Could she finesse it by saying something like, due to a personal conflict? Would that fly? The disgruntled associate would start digging into it either way. Not good. Then Courtney's own associate, Jake Simmons, approached her enormous walnut desk, looking glum. We've got a couple of hearing requests on that coal transshipment case up in Lake Superior City, Wisconsin. Jake set them on her desk. No lawyers yet, but somebody's clearly been coaching them. Shit. She wasn't thrilled to learn that she'd be spending several weeks in far northern Wisconsin on Lake Superior. What do you think? Courtney asked. She glanced over the papers herself. Mostly NIMBY stuff, in my opinion, but there are a couple of real issues. The coal operation has been regularly getting notices of violations on air monitors, and that suddenly stopped. People are saying that there haven't been any recent violations because they messed up with the monitors. That's not really a permit issue, though. That's enforcement, Courtney said. Well, they've done a good job of trying to make it one. And the other decent issue for them relates to whether they are in fact spraying on the piles the overcoating that reduces coal dust. It's quite an expensive process, apparently, or at least that's what Errol Franks told me. Jake paused and looked away. Had Jake winced a bit, saying Earl's name, knowing he'd gone to prison for trying to bribe a judge? Or did Jake know that Courtney had dated the much older Earl? Don't worry, I missed the big dumb F word too, she said, and I still intend to pick Earl's brain on this, whether that ex-con has his law license or not. So that brings us finally to the last and probably the best character, Earl Franks, the big dumb F word that Courtney called. Earl's in his late 60s. He's been disgraced and just out of prison. He was a former Wisconsin Supreme Court judge. But Earl knows where all the bodies are buried when it comes to coal shipping, and so both sides want to work with him. This is Earl's first chapter on Pink Lake. Earl Frank started up the ultra-quiet Enduro trolling motor on his Mercury fishing boat and set off for Farnham Bay on the other side of Blue Lake. It was more like Pink Lake, the way the sunlight set off the waters. The sun had just begun to rise, gloriously. Earl loved being out in the morning fog, enjoying the September chill and stirrings of color along the shoreline. The smallmouth bass were practically jumping into his boat. Fall was his favorite season, and he couldn't believe his good fortune after 25 months in the dark prison. He bought the old boat a couple of weeks after he got out. There was a story there, the one he'd only told Betty. It involved Sam the snake. His brother Sam hadn't come to visit Earl even once in prison, but instead seized the opportunity to have Earl's 93-year-old mother sign payable on death notes that stripped Earl of his inheritance. After Earl got out, an old friend who did probate had helped Earl investigate it a bit. It turned out that Sam had also been using his new swordfish, but Betty said that was too clunky. He'd settled for Betty's own suggestion. Brother's keeper. That boat's definitely a keeper that came from your brother, and people will think that you're religious, Betty said. If they only knew, he deadpanned. Now I'm skipping ahead a bit again, but as he pulled in another nice smallmouth, he heard her voice. He released the grateful yellowfish, and trolled himself quietly back to his pier. As he entered the back door, he saw the look on Betty's face. There would be no hero's welcome this time. "Good morning to you, too," Earl said. "What'd I do this time?" "That's what I want you to tell me," Betty replied, pacing. "Your cell phone buzzed not once but twice this morning, and the second time it fell off your bedstand." "Okay, sorry, kind of dumb of me, but not worthy of this kind of greeting. I told you I've been leaving my phone inside so that I don't take 500 photos of the sunrise. That's not what I'm mad about. When I picked up the phone, I saw that both calls were from your skanky ex-girlfriend, Courtney." "Courtney Sharp?" "Yes, what other Courtney is there?" Betty's arms were crossed and her lips tight. "What's going on, Earl?" "I have no clue." "Shit, did Courtney have HIV or something? I haven't spoken with her since before my sentencing." "You swear?" He nodded. "Probably just some old file." He was touched that she was jealous. Earl was crazy about Betty. "Nothing personal, I'm sure." "Okay, I'm sorry." Betty came toward him and gave him a glancing kiss on the cheek. "How were they biting this morning?" "Really nice bass today, and so was the sunrise. Very pink. I saw it." She mustered a slight smile. "But call her back now." "Yes, boss." "I don't want to sit us sitting around dreading it all day. I'll make you a cup of fresh coffee." The phone was ringing as Betty brought him his Earl the Pearl mug. "Courtney, why the hell are you calling me?" Earl blustered, trying to reassure Betty. She smiled, full throttle this time, and slipped back into the kitchen. "Very professional greeting, Earl," Courtney replied. "I can tell you've been out of the office for a while." Okay, so this book obviously has strong themes about the climate crisis, and as I've been doing events around the Midwest and Milwaukee and Madison and Minneapolis and all over Duluth, Superior, etc., it's almost uncanny how every time there's been a major climate event. The first event I had was Asheville, North Carolina, where unprecedented flooding. Last year, if I remember correctly, we had 24 $1 billion storm events. That was the second highest on record. The first highest was in 2023, the year before. So this is a little bit on, toward the end of the book, we had in Madison, where I'm from, we had the Canadian wildfire smoke from 2023. That was very intense. I'm not sure here in Des Moines, but that's also in the book. But this is just a little final word on the climate crisis theme. Jason is out in the Hamptons and going to a writers' conference. He picked up his rental car to drive to the Hamptons. The traffic was miserable. His Google Maps told him it would take him 2 hours and 15 minutes to make it to Southampton. But 20 minutes later, he still had 2 hours and 18 minutes to go. Jason turned on the public radio and heard an interview with the Swedish author of How to Blow Up a Pipeline. He was talking quietly about the need for climate activists to consider going beyond pacifism and even considering targeted violence. "No," Jason yelled at his radio. "Don't blow up a pipeline. Stay on the moral high ground." It was baffling how people responded so differently to the climate crisis. Some people wanted to blow up pipelines to stop the carbon economy at all costs. Others reacted with defensive disdain to any suggestion on how they could do their own small part. They hoarded old light bulbs and worried about people coming for their burgers and the gas grills they cooked them on. The world of their childhood was the last word. But nostalgia was not a strategy any more than violence. What the planet needed was a plan. Thank you all for coming.